Loss brought them to Parliament Hill.
This is a picture of his son.
And anger at how Colten Boushie's death was treated by the justice system. But now, some hope.
We continue praying that something is done and that we could go home and tell the people that we tried hard and we're still going to keep trying and we're going to keep going and this ain't going to stop until something changes.
Boushie drove on to this Saskatchewan farm with friends in 2016. The farmer believed they'd come to steal. Gerald Stanley says he fired warning shots, then accidentally shot Boushie in the back of the head. A jury found him not guilty in Boushie's death. After meeting with 4 cabinet ministers, Boushie's family spent more than half an hour behind closed doors with the Prime Minister today.
There's very much a desire to work together on the path of reconciliation, on improving the system that is failing far too many Canadians.
Boushie's family is optimistic.
Each person has promised to work with us to make concrete changes within the system.
One change that's expected, altering the rules around how juries are formed. But as more protests today demonstrate, the case continues to be divisive. And some argue the Prime Minister and Justice Minister have said too much.
If there's a retrial situation in this case, if it gets appealed, if the Minister of Justice is now saying that somehow we can do better, she's essentially saying that the result from this particular case was not a result that she agrees with.
Not at all, says the minister.
For not just Indigenous Canadians across the country, but Canadians who are speaking out on the challenges that we face in the criminal justice system, protesting on the streets, to have an Attorney General that doesn't recognize that or acknowledge it would be deeply concerning.
Though concern from all sides of the debate over this case doesn't seem likely to end soon. Catherine Cullen, CBC News, Ottawa.
I sat down with the Justice Minister in her Parliament Hill office today to ask her what kinds of changes the government is willing to make to respond to the Boushie family and whether the justice system is treating all Canadians the same way. Here's part of that conversation. Nice to see you, Justice Minister.
Nice to see you.
Do you think the justice system is fair for Indigenous people?
I think that we are, as the justice system is incredibly challenged with respect to Indigenous people. Do I think it's fair? I don't think it's fair right now. I think we can do better, and we have a lot to do in order to put in place the necessary reforms.
I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but the first substantive recommendation around preemptory challenges came in 1991. Mm-hmm. Why has nothing been done since then? That's a long time.
Well, I dating back from 1991 and confirmed again in 2013, this has been a recommendation. I appreciate the national conversation that's being had, not only about criminal justice system reform, but around jury selection and preemptory challenges. Why I can't speak to the governments of the past. This is something that is high on our radar screen now.
I had never heard you mention this before this trial. I've never heard you mention juries or changing preemptory challenges or making juries more inclusive for Indigenous people. Is there a reason why it took this trial to get you talking about it?
Well, this trial has highlighted an issue that has been, as you say, long-standing. We have had discussions, and I'm completely not making any excuses around juries. Our Justice Committee is studying juries right now in terms of the mental health of jurors. But this is a necessary component that has been elevated to the national consciousness, and we're going to do something about it.
But would you accept some responsibility for the fact that even as a former attorney, as a Justice Minister, this was not something that was high, I guess, or even on your list of things to reform?
I accept responsibility as the Justice Minister, as the Attorney General, to do everything I can to improve the justice system. We have been engaged in substantive conversations right across the country, and the issue of jury selection, preemptory, the discussions that we're having, challenges right now, it didn't come up.
Do you think that lawyers are using preemptory challenges based on race?
Well, I think that Defence Counsel and Crowns, whether in Canada or other places, have used these challenges to get a jury that they want. If there's any legacy that goes to the last couple of days and for the Boushie family that we met with today, this is one thing that we can point to that we're moving forward and seriously consider changing.
There's some other things that those reports talk about that I think you could do pretty easily that don't have to do with the criminal code. Paying Indigenous people up front for jury expenses. A lot of times they have to cover it themselves and can't. Changing the questionnaire to make it more inclusive so it doesn't ask about citizenship, language, or say there would be a penalty if you don't fill out this form. Why not do those things that are very easy to do and would make it so that people feel like they are part of the justice system?
Well, I mean, those are things that can be done. We need to be very aware that we have shared responsibilities for the administration of justice. Provinces have responsibilities in terms of jury selection. And I do want to make this point. I think that having this discussion about juries is really important. And as I said, we are going to seriously consider changes in this regard. But we can't conflate the challenges that Indigenous peoples have faced in the criminal justice system simply to jury selection or peremptory challenges. Yeah. It's so much broader than that.
Certainly, and I'm not trying to conflate that or reduce it to that. Mm-hmm. But I wonder if Indigenous people who are doubting their place within Canada's justice system now don't think that there's an opportunity for reconciliation when we can't fix something like this.
Well, I think that we are. I mean, I recognize the issue or the lack of trust. I mean, I can understand where that comes from, based on the history and the relationships. The lack of hope is an absolutely devastating thing, and we need to do everything we can to prevent people from having a lack of hope.
I'll end on just the tweets, because it was unusual to see you tweet about a specific case. Why did you feel it was necessary?
I came back to my house. I turned on the television. I saw the verdict. I saw not just the verdict, but more specifically the anguish on the faces of the family. And I was getting contacted by people right across the country about their hurt. And I felt compelled to acknowledge that.
Because you felt the verdict was wrong?
No, I felt that the outcry and what I saw and what my phone relayed by virtue of communications that I had were the people saying the system needs to be improved. We can do better.
Well, last Friday's verdict has cast the spotlight most brightly on the issue of race. There's another issue that is simmering in rural communities like North Battleford, where Boushie was killed, and that's the security needs of people living in remote areas where limited access to police means a lot of people own firearms. The public safety minister addressed that part of the story today.
We need to recognize that we're all in this boat together, and we need to work on the solutions together, meaning enhancing our policing and public safety services and programs, both federally and provincially and municipally and in Indigenous communities.
Goodale says solutions include working on root causes of community insecurity and crime and investing, as the government already has, in First Nations policing programs.